Story name. We found a dead Wendigo on my grandpa's property. Shared by Reflexy0N. I guess for those into cryptids or whatever, if you're reading this, why do you keep going after them? Surely not just for the money. I bet a lot of people do it because they love that thrill, right? You know, the adrenaline rush. But when does excitement turn to pure terror? Don't misunderstand me, taking risks can be super refreshing, but so many things can go wrong. Especially, what's your reaction when you come across the torn-up body of a cryptid after hunting it down? When reality hits that there's something even bigger and scarier out there. My grandpa wasn't into monster hunting per se, but man was he wild. Once, he managed to hunt a grizzly with nothing more than a crossbow mud from the rain, some leaves, and his clever brain. Ever since, the bear's head has been up on a mount above the fireplace in their log cabin. I don't know how deep Grandpa's love for nature goes back, but I do know he got sick of city life way before quitting his job as an engineer. Since then, he lives out in this old house, really far into Olympic National Forest in Washington State, like 40 miles from the park itself. I can't even picture how lonely it was for him to live out there by himself, but he never seemed to let it get to him. Recently, I've become close friends with a dude I met at college named Martin. He's got that same spark in his eyes about nature and adventure as my grandpa did. He keeps bugging me to hit the outdoors for camping, fishing, or hunting, you name it. It was obvious to bring Martin along when I visited my grandpa's place. Frankly, I worried they'd become best friends so fast that Martin would forget to come back with me. In the end, though, none of that happened because we both got a really bad case of fearing the woods after the day. Martin was really excited this time, almost bouncing in the passenger seat of my Jeep. Last trip, Grandpa promised to teach him how to skin animals and prepare pelts. Martin often talked about how great it would feel to sit by a roaring fireplace with a huge deerskin rug laid out beneath it. I was just motivated to check on my grandpa because he hadn't been answering my calls for the last week, so I was a bit concerned. We faced an issue early on as we drove up the long dirt road leading to my grandpa's house. When rounding a corner, I suddenly saw a bunch of fallen trees blocking our way. Damn, what happened here? Martin exclaimed. There haven't been any storms lately, have there? I sat with both hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, too shocked to say anything. No, it's been clear weather in this area since March, I replied. Weird, I said as I turned off the engine and got out of the Jeep. The only sound was the rustling leaves and the gentle mid-spring breeze, nature's background noise. We were just over 2 miles away from Grandpa's house, a distance we could easily walk. I had my phone, a flashlight, water, spare clothes, and my utility watch on my wrist. My plan was to hike up to Grandpa's place and then come back down in his truck to chop the fallen logs with a chainsaw. We decided it would be more interesting to walk through the woods alongside the track rather than following the long dirt road, which can get pretty boring. Only after a few minutes of walking, we were hit by the terrible smell of decomposing flesh. Although animals dying in the forest is common, that part of my brain instinctively reacted with disgust. Shit, something's rotting out here, I said. I can't imagine how it would smell in summer. Martin made a small, sick sound of agreement. The stench kept getting worse and was strongest when I almost tripped over what looked like a sharp object on the ground. At first, I thought it was a cluster of branches, but that assumption quickly disappeared once I saw their pale ceramic-like reflections. We come across the head of a dead deer lying on the ground. Something there felt off. Its teeth were way too long and you could see its face bones. Despite the smell, I can tell it's fresh because of the dark blood from its neck and mouth. Martin says, holy crap, that's creepy.
Do you think a bear did this? Look, we only have black bears around here, and I doubt they could do something like this. Maybe a cougar.
But I've never heard of one completely decapitating a deer. My attention gets caught by a trail of blood on the ground leading towards the rest of the deer's body. At first, it looked like a regular four-legged animal from far away, but as we got closer, I realized how wrong I was. The body turned out to belong to some enormous beast. It was big and skinny with super long, sharp claws spread on the ground. The creature had dark fur with lots of patches.
Martin asks, is it okay?
He comes over from behind to check out what I'm looking at. When he sees the dead body, he stops talking and goes silent just like me. This situation is too shocking for words. I've heard old stories about horrifying creatures in these woods, but never thought I'd face one. The creature lies there, dead as the leaves it's on. It looks utterly destroyed with huge puncture marks all over. Martin finally speaks up. Is that? But before he can finish his sentence, we hear a loud snap. Not just any stick, but an entire branch breaking. My back straightens up in surprise. Against better judgment, I slowly turn my head towards the direction of the sound. I catch a quick glimpse of something huge with long limbs covered in shaggy hair, resembling pine bark color.
But as soon as I turn around to face it, whatever it was disappears into thin air.
My fear grows and I feel like screaming. I search everywhere, but nothing is there.
Kel, what's wrong?
Martin whispers.
Is the cougar still here?
No, it's fine. I reassure him. Let's keep moving. We can discuss this later with my grandpa.
But remember, the cat might still be nearby.
It's best not to stay in one spot too long. Before we leave, I take a few pictures of the torn-up body on my phone, focusing on the head without going back for a better shot. For some reason, going back feels like a huge mistake.
We walk quickly, pretending not to notice the heavy movements between trees nearby.
Big animals usually break small twigs, but this was an entire branch. Despite that, these movements didn't sound clumsy at all, more like those of a calculated stalker.
I tried really hard not to look around all the time, but I kept sneaking glances at what was happening behind us in the woods.
Honestly, I don't even know if I hoped to see something or not see anything at all.
But it was pretty clear there weren't any big cats lurking out there. Hey Kel, we should probably stick closer to the road for a bit. It's easier to make a quick getaway if needed. I nodded in agreement and we moved off to the right, heading up the slope next to the road. Deep down, I was sure that whatever mystery creature we were worried about wasn't actually a big cat. We were just trying not to think too hard about the possibility of monsters. As we walked along the road, the forest seemed unusually quiet.
That was definitely not comforting because when woods are silent, it usually means predators are around, common sense among nature lovers.
Seeing a herd of deer on the path did help me feel slightly better.
They looked at us with tilted heads but didn't seem too worried by our presence. At that moment, though, I felt more exposed and scared as this heavy knot formed in my stomach. The deer began to move off the road and into the woods when we got closer, except one stayed behind. This one wasn't frozen still, but it looked really strange, almost like it was struggling against an invisible force. It suddenly jerked and cried out as if it were weightless, its body snapping and crushing. In a flash, what appeared to be a regular deer transformed into something nightmarishly gigantic, easily matching the size of 2 stacked elephants. This monstrous creature was hunched over on incredibly thick and long front legs that ended in slender, sloth-like claws. Its body was elongated too, ending with shorter back legs, bent knees, and feet supported by spiky appendages. Its head, resting atop a curved neck, had an eerie mix of horse-like and crocodile-like features. It had hollow sockets instead of eyes, and its mouth flaps showed horrifyingly uneven and jutting teeth. The creature was covered in deep cuts, and its skin was torn around the face area from a recent fight. Stunned, Kel and I just stood there staring back at this beast. Its only apparent movements were the sets of ribs like structures undulating underneath it, as if the deer it had become were being ripped apart from within. The poor animal appeared to wither right before our eyes, as though sharp ribs penetrated deeper into its body. In that moment, we felt like we too were part of that deer herd, frozen in shock. Some deer already fled, but others just stood as if turned stone under the creature's gaze. Then we smelled something new and horrendous, a mix of wet soil, sulfur, methane, and rotting fish. It was coming from the beast's mouth, where wisps of gas were forming thick, swirling clouds that rose into the evening sky. The tension eased when the deer's mangled body hit the ground. The rest of them ran away into the woods, and that scary beast jerked its head their way. Its head was really off. It wobbled awkwardly as it turned. I stepped back because it gave a deep, rough noise before chasing after the herd. It had sticky hair all over, and even hit a tree on its way, but didn't seem to care. We held our breaths until we couldn't hear the beast's big footsteps in the growing dusk. What was that thing? Martin stammered, crying out of shock. I don't know, man, but we must get home before it gets dark. We probably won't stand a chance against it if it's night. Are you crazy? We have to go back. I want to put as much distance between us and this place. What about my grandpa? We can't just leave him here with that monster. Martin didn't argue. He immediately started running up the road. We were already more than halfway to my grandpa's house, and even if we tried to run away, it would be easy for that creature to catch us in the open. The only light from far away looked safe, like a beacon of hope. But I knew we couldn't keep going out there, exposed like sitting ducks. I checked my watch, remembering the direction north-northeast, and dragged Martin off to the left side of the road. We had to struggle through steep terrain and thick brush. The house's lights soon vanished, leaving us to rely only on our sense of direction. For a moment, I thought we might have gotten lost, but then I saw the smoke rising above the treetops. It could only be my grandpa's chimney. Come on, this way, I urged Martin as we neared. The house didn't seem to have any lights on. Maybe Grandpa had already gone to bed, and that was why he wasn't communicating. We reached the top of a hill, then descended towards a flat area, but there was no sign of the house. A sudden puff of smoke appeared out of nowhere in mid-air without any obvious source. We stopped to watch and saw the point, where it came from, flipping around randomly in the air. I could smell something organic, which made me remember a previous encounter. Then, as before, we were face to face with this thing spewing thick smoke from its mouth. But this time, the moonlight reflected off of 6 black orbs beneath its head, 3 on each side like shiny obsidian. These moved independently, and I immediately recognized them as eyes. What was this monstrous creature? If those were its eyes, and it had a structure resembling ribs around its mouth that ate deer, then the limp head must be a decoy or defense mechanism. It made sense that this fake head flopped unnaturally with its movements. I quickly blinked and looked at my watch to confirm we were heading due east.
The beast had tricked us into thinking it was elsewhere. Now it circled around us, ready to pounce. I grabbed Martin's shoulder and dragged him in the right direction, sprinting for our lives.
Martin was confused by the sudden mover.
"Hey, what are you doing?"
"There's nothing there."
"Shut up. Just run as fast as you can now. Don't stop for anything." Our feet pounded on the ground while we heard loud noises behind us as trees were smashed. I didn't dare look back, scared that slowing down would mean death. We could see a yellow light between some tree trunks. We were nearly there, but I was surprised the creature hadn't already caught up to us.
The trees in its way didn't seem to be stopping it.
The beast almost hit us when suddenly we saw an opening on our left among some thick, old oak trees. We dove through gaps just large enough for us to fit and hit the ground, rolling sideways without a moment's hesitation. We couldn't even take time to get dazed as we heard a huge crash where we'd just been standing.
We backed up and saw a massive arm slipping between tree trunks. It was wide but not too thick compared to the oaks. Its claws searched blindly for us.
"Let's move," I yelled, and we both jumped up and sprinted towards where the light was coming from. As we ran, the noises got fainter.
Did whatever that thing is get surprised, or did it still think we were hiding behind those trees?
I didn't care about anything except getting inside before we're stuck outside. We skidded to a stop in front of the house, and gravel made a noise as my fist hit the door over and over again, but nobody was opening it.
Finally, the door swung open by itself, and I stumbled inside.
I looked up and saw my grandpa's eyes looking really wide. He didn't look like himself at all. He glanced past me at Martin and then behind him, clearly seeing something outside that made his pupils contract.
"Come on, boys, get in here," he whispered loudly. We walked inside, and he started to close the door, but then hesitated. "Never mind, it's no use."
He was right. If this beast wanted to come in, there's not much we could do about it with just a locked door.
Grandpa led us over to an uncovered floor hatch. Martin asked what it is as he looked down at the hatch. "Oh, this is my old wine cellar," Grandpa responded before being interrupted by Martin asking more questions.
"Get down into the cellar first, and then we can talk," Grandpa said.
He pulled on a handle, opened the hatch, and showed us a sturdy wooden ladder that went down to a dimly lit space under the house.
One at a time, we climbed down the dusty rungs until we were all standing on the cold concrete floor below. Grandpa was last to come down. He pulled a heavy rug over the open hatch before closing and securing it. "So you've seen this thing too?" I asked my grandpa. "We barely escaped it," I panted, still catching my breath from our escape. "Did you get away mostly unharmed?"
"Yes, apart from some scratches."
"Good."
Grandpa walked over to an upturned crate and sat down on it. Martin and I looked at each other, then back at Grandpa. "Well, what is this thing?"
Martin asked.
Grandpa gave Martin a look of disapproval, but then understanding quickly came to his face. "I'd lecture you on your manners, but now isn't the time," he said. He sighed tiredly and dropped his head before looking up again with a sharp intake of breath. "You know, I only saw it once before, during my college years. I had some Danish friends in my class who invited me to visit them in Denmark. The landscapes there were beautiful, like rising peaks among trees." Before he could drift off into a daydream, I cleared my throat to bring him back to the present. "Right, so we were deep in the woods when it happened." We all felt paranoid because we thought something big was following us, maybe an elk or something. But we never actually saw anything. We only heard it. Then, oh man, one of the girls in front of me started to rise off the ground like she was being lifted by something. Whatever this thing is did a number on her. It crushed her, made her look like a meatball being squeezed. I saw it then, curved bones wrapping around her and stabbing deep into her. That sight will never leave my mind. It's like a stain there. We saw the same thing, Martin said quickly, but it was a deer. It seemed like it took all its insides out when it finished. Yeah, I can't say I understand how it works. You can only notice it if you know something's there. If it's actually there. Anyway, we ran back down the trail as fast as possible and managed to lose it. The whole time there was this awful smell like rotten eggs mixed with dirt. Ugh. We ended up back in our starting town, went straight to the police station, and told them what happened. All they found was a small piece of meat, maybe from the thigh or something similar. One of the other guys mentioned later that we saw smoke rising out of the forest when we were back in town. There's an old Danish story that says people throughout history have seen smoke columns in the woods, and most who went to check them didn't return. They say it would move around, not like how a fire spreads, but more like wandered back and forth. Man, that's a scary story, Grandpa, I said. But it doesn't help us figure out what this thing is. We already know what you've told us. Well, he replied, I'm sure the creature has many names since it can appear anywhere it likes. But I only heard it called Skorstender. That means chimney beast if my memory serves me right. That makes sense. We thought we were seeing smoke from your chimney, but it led us straight to it. Hell, Grandpa sighed. This house doesn't even have a chimney. Martin looked at me, scoffing, then back at Grandpa. So it tricks people like that? Yes, but I don't think it means to. I would guess it started with the fumes after it ate that deer. Yeah, I responded. Whatever this thing is, it isn't from here. It's not from anywhere on our planet, I believe. It eats something and then starts releasing smoke. The waste product of its digestion, probably. So shit gas. Martin chuckled. He always manages to lighten the mood a bit even in dire situations. I looked up at the plane's ceiling above us, thinking about what Grandpa had said. I remembered how this all started and pulled out my phone to show them the pictures we took when we found it on foot. We discovered this after starting to walk back from your place. I have a hunch, but do you know what it is? Grandpa squinted at the screen and then grabbed the phone from my hand. Scroll over, that's only the head I mentioned. His attention was only disrupted by soft taps on the screen as he scrolled. A look of recognition appeared in his eyes. He nodded up and down. Well, I never thought I'd see one around here before, but then again, I wasn't looking for one. It's probably a Wendigo. Right? I asked. I have to say, never seen one around these parts before, but then again, I was never looking for one. I doubt you need it, but keep that as a reminder for what this beast is capable of. I put my phone back in my pocket and sighed, letting my chin rest on my hands. Normally, in another situation, I'd be surprised to find out such a creature existed, but not now. This helps nothing, Mr. Barnett, Martin said with uncertainty trembling in his voice. But what are we gonna do? What can we do? I don't know. Well, I have a stupid idea, but it's just grasping at straws. anything over sitting here and waiting to die," Martin whispered, staring off into space. Grandpa looked up toward the basement window, the only source of natural light in the room, whatever little there remained. I was checking my traps in the woods, maybe about 600 to 700 yards away from here. When I got there, I saw this strange spot or smudge. It's hard to describe, but that's the best way I can put it. It was so weird that it hurt my eyes just looking at it. I've never seen anything like it before. After that, I started noticing these things called skorstender. He paused, like he was having trouble finding the right words.
"So what happened then?" I asked eagerly, leaning in closer.
"Well, this is just a guess, but I believe that's where it came from. When I was there, I threw a rock into it, but instead of hearing it hit the ground, it seemed to disappear or go somewhere else."
"If we can only lead it back there and get it to go inside."
"Wait, hold on," interrupted. "Shouldn't we call for help?"
"Like the police or even the army?" "What do you think will happen if the cops come out here?"
"A chief and a rookie in one car against this thing, and trying to convince the US military to send Marines out here would be like asking for a joke."
"They wouldn't believe us." I fell silent, realizing he was probably right but still dreading the outcome. Either the beast leaves or we die.
"I'm not even going to mention trying to drive away because you saw what it does to the trees."
"Stealth might work, but it's better at that than we are. And being big, it's harder for us to hide. And I don't want either of you to lose your lives." His last words sent a shiver down my spine.
He didn't say it or try it, but I began to understand what he meant. "Grandpa, you..."
"Don't worry about me, I have something in mind, but both of you need to listen closely." Martin and I set our full attention on him.
I wanted to hear his plan, but part of me hoped it wouldn't go the way I thought it would.
"Now, I want to make this clear before anything else. I'm going alone, and you boys have to stay here and do as I say."
My heart sank into a deep pit of despair.
"Are you crazy?"
"No, I have to go with you, Grandpa cut me off, signaling for silence.
"Esel, I say."
I knew he was right, but my mind rebelled against the idea.
"Okay. Now I'm going to call you when I'm far enough away, all right? You have to pick up and stay on the call with me. It's vital that you keep your attention on my voice. I need both of you to be brave for the next part. I need you to make as much noise as possible."
Martin's eyes widened in fear. "Won't that just get us killed?"
"I haven't finished. That's only until I call you. When I do, you shut up and hide in the darkest corner of this cellar, okay?"
I was breathing heavily now, cold sweat forming on my forehead, but I closed my eyes and calmed myself.
"Yeah, okay. Good. Once we're connected, I'll start." We were silenced by a loud thump from overhead, so forceful that the ceiling spewed cement dust down on us.
Then another thump, and another, and another.
I jumped in surprise when a huge crash came from above, followed by rubble falling loudly. The heavy thuds got closer and louder, until we could only hear the floorboards creak under something very heavy. I looked over at my grandpa, who did the same back to me and quickly shushed me with a gesture. I nodded and slowly turned towards the basement hatch. We heard the beast trying to move quietly as it approached, but couldn't keep its movements completely silent. When we saw the hatch start to give way under its weight, I couldn't help but let out a small whimper.
Then came a loud bang that seemed to shake the entire house.
After that, there was silence except for the beast's heavy breathing.
It was trying to trick us into thinking it had won so we'd panic and run away.
Its smartness scared me more than its ugly looks.
It kept playing this game of bait a few more times before getting clearly annoyed.
The sound of its heavy movements faded until we couldn't hear anything from it, other than the single crash that must have been a tree falling outside. I got ready to start our plan, but my grandpa stopped me by grabbing my arms firmly. I noticed him looking at me with wide eyes and a stern face as he hissed for me to sit back down.
"Not yet," he whispered fiercely. "The bastard is smart."
It's probably hiding at the edge of the trees, watching us to see if we tried to come out. The three of us sat in silence, listening carefully for any small sound that would tell us where the beast was. We waited an incredibly long time until Grandpa finally got up and moved to the ladder. He climbed it slowly while trying not to make any noise with each step.
When he reached the hatch, he opened it a little by little and looked around from side to side to ensure we were safe.
Just as he started lifting a lid, something likely a broken tile disturbed beneath his touch and made a loud clattering sound above us.
Grandpa stopped moving immediately, tensing up in response. A loud creak sounded, and then came a terrifying growl that I prayed not to hear. This sent Grandpa into action. He quickly pushed away from the ladder and tucked himself before rolling onto the floor right before the hatch was slammed shut with great force, damaging it and its hinges in the process. Grandpa jumped up fast, driven by adrenaline more than his age. He glanced around at the floor, then back up at us with new determination. "Oh, damn. Plan change. Martin, make noise to attract the beast."
"Kel, help me get out of this window."
Martin was shocked and started breathing faster.
"Fuck,"
he exclaimed as he put his fingers on his temples, but did well, turning towards the hatch to start making a racket right away. While Martin was distracting the monster outside, Grandpa and I went over to the window.
I knelt down and locked my hands together to form a foothold for him to step onto. He stepped in, and we counted down from 3 before I lifted him up while holding steady despite being tired from running away earlier. Grandpa was heavier than he looked, but I pushed him through, helping him get out of the window into the dim night. I stayed focused on my granddad as he turned around, really wanting to look, but holding back because I heard something tearing apart aggressively. "Okay, I'm going to call in a second," he panted. "When I do, tell Martin to hurry up." "I love you, buddy."
"You too, Grandpa."
My words gave him a boost and made him sprint into the forest so fast he almost disappeared into the dark.
I was standing still again when Martin screamed, and I saw him backing away from those thin claws coming through a big tear in the hatch door. A thick line of blood was trailing behind him, matching the red on one of the monster's huge claws. "It got me. Oh God, it hurts,"
he cried out, flipping over and crawling toward me on his belly. I ran to help him, but when I let go, Martin just lay there in shock. His calf had deep cuts, showing raw flesh and bone, sliced open like soft cheese.
His mouth was open, but he wasn't making a sound, so I started screaming for him.
I tried to sound brave, but ended up whimpering loudly. The beast's arm was almost halfway across the room, and still it kept coming through the broken hatch, its claws scraping around, searching for us. Martin and I backed up against the far wall as the huge hand got closer, very slowly and painfully. Just then my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. For some reason, answering Grandpa's call felt like it would keep us safe.
I pulled out the phone quickly, pressing the screen and speaking into it.
"Granddad, it's really close. The beast is about to catch us."
"Please do something,"
I cried.
Instead of an answer, there was a loud crack, and then my phone was gone. The arm of the beast jerked back, stopping for a moment before it ripped through the basement wall, scattering pieces of wood on the floor. It was just a simple noise, but I recognized it. Grandpa's Black Hawk gun. He must have had it with him all along. I'm not sure when he picked it up, maybe he had it the whole time. Outside, I saw the huge shape of the beast running into the trees at speeds that matched my Jeep on high gear. I jumped when Grandpa suddenly started shouting over the phone call. The words were muffled, mixed with sounds of moving around. I took the chance to take off my jacket and then my t-shirt, using it as a bandage for Martin's upper calf to slow the bleeding. "Hey, Kel," Grandpa said over the phone, sounding distant and faint. "Make sure you keep up your exercise routine. Man, it doesn't get any easier with age." I gave a half-hearted laugh. "I will. I want to go hiking in these woods with you, camp live off the land." "I know you do." God, I do too," he said, trying not to cry. "You're gonna have to stay strong for your mom, okay? There's no chance I'm getting out this time." "But you and your sister are." Then I started crying, tears rolling down my cheeks. "I'm going to miss you so much, Grandpa." "Yeah, but we had some good times. Amazing times, right?" "I sure as hell did." "And well, dying in an adventure like this isn't too bad a way to go, is it?" A strange sense of comfort filled me inside, almost breaking through the tears. "Yeah. All right, I'm here." The entrance to another world. No idea what I'll find through there. I could hear the loud creature on the other line as it got closer, its clicks and rattles too. "I'm going in." "Promise me one thing, though." "Anything, Grandpa." "Heh. You be good, kid, and make my daughter proud. That's all I ask." A weird sound came from the phone's speaker, something like a stone sliding across an icy lake, followed by a splash that seemed to swallow all noise. Silence was shattered when a shaken voice spoke again through the phone. "What the? Where are you?" I yelled, desperate for any small piece of information he could give me. "I don't know, I'm in a tube, some kind of giant glass pipe." I can see everything outside at once. More tubes branching everywhere. This place is huge. As he talked, the connection got weaker, crackling in my ears. I'm heading down this tube now and there, central one, but it's enormous. No, I don't think it's the main one in the distance. So many. What the hell is this place? My tired brain couldn't make sense of any of this. I just listened, as confused as he was. Streams flowing through some of them, and He was cut off by a huge splash, but due to the poor sound quality it sounded like a roar. I could only hear his whimpers until that hissing noise crept under my skin again. It mixed with static noises. But then I heard something completely unexpected even after seeing what I'd seen. CKRR. SSSSSS Radith. A TTT flow shows us CK. The path. The monster spoke. Its words sounded like someone teaching it to talk, broken by its animalistic clicks and hisses. Grandpa screamed, but then the call cut out, leaving a high-pitched tone. My hand acted on its own and my grip loosened, dropping the phone onto the floor. By the time I bent down to pick it up, only the home screen greeted me. Call failed. I looked at Martin. He was unconscious but still breathing. The bleeding had stopped, but he needed urgent care. Still, I sat on the cold concrete floor and decided to wait until sunrise. Grandpa's plan seemed to have worked, but a sliver of doubt held me in place. The adrenaline was fading. My body ached, my head throbbed. I fought to stay awake, but my eyelids felt like they were weighed down by anchors. All light vanished and I fell asleep. One morning, heat and a bright red-orange light woke me up. I opened my eyes, not happy about the sunlight burning through what was left of the basement ceiling right onto my face. Any thoughts that this was just a bad dream vanished. I turned over to see Martin lying a few feet away from me. Thankfully, he was still breathing. His left leg was covered in dry, crusted blood, and a little bit was still seeping from his injured limb. I decided to let him rest while I climbed up the broken ladder with what remained of its rungs and made my way out into the house, or what was left of it. The scene was devastating. Almost all of the front part of the house had been destroyed. Wooden beams stuck out from piles of rubble and dust, but everything was quiet. The forest birds were singing again, unlike the previous day when they had gone silent because a predator was around. I remember learning that animals get quiet when a predator is nearby, but I was too stressed to notice until their songs started up again. I still felt cold shivers running down my spine. I felt safe with Grandpa in the basement, but not anymore after the attack. There wasn't any smoke and no bad smell, but I couldn't shake that feeling off. I looked around the back part of the house that was still standing and found the keys to Grandpa's truck quicker than expected on the kitchen counter. I jumped down into the old wine cellar and carefully woke Martin up by gently shaking him until he stirred. He was disoriented. "Don't worry, I'm going to get you home," I said. I put his left arm over my shoulder and helped him climb out through the ruins towards the truck. Driving a bit too fast, I had to brake sharply when fallen tree trunks appeared suddenly. The sudden stop woke Martin up from his daze because of the pain in his leg. I apologized but didn't waste any more time getting us out of the truck and into my Jeep quickly. The smell of death was stronger than before around the body of what seemed to be a Wendigo. This reminded me of the previous night's terror, making me paranoid as we walked from the truck to my Jeep. I felt very exposed and vulnerable. We got to my Jeep quickly even with Martin's injury. My heart was pounding so hard that I could see my chest pulsating. Without any clear signs of the beast, I drove straight to the small police station. Maybe bursting in without warning wasn't the best idea, but my mind was elsewhere. First off, I had them call an ambulance for Martin and then reported a serious animal attack. When asked what attacked us, I quickly said cougar. The officer grunted as I explained the situation to him. Grandpa was gone, taken away by our attacker. An ambulance arrived shortly to pick up Martin. The EMTs were quite surprised at his severe injury, but took care of him right away and got him stable at the nearest hospital, where he stayed for about a week. A search party gathered to look for Grandpa but didn't find anything, as expected. I was questioned about the state of his house, but I think the shock in my eyes did a good job defending me. There were no signs of explosives on the rubble and nothing else suspicious. It has been a few years since this happened, and I've made it through the stages of grief more or less intact. I'd like to say that Grandpa lives on in my memory, but that wouldn't be entirely accurate. I can still remember our talks, days together, the smell of his fireplace, all those things. But try as hard as I can't recall what he looked like. There's just a vague blur where he should have been in any pictures I still have. I don't know where he ended up, perhaps some sort of network of tubes, but I'm pretty sure his grave is somewhere else, in another place separate from this world. I'm forever grateful for his sacrifice, but can't help thinking that it was only our lives that were spared from the Scorstender, Are there more of them out there? Can it somehow move to different locations? Only my grandpa would have had those answers, though. Just a warning, if you find yourself in the wilderness and see a steady plume of smoke rising from the trees, or even catch an organic smell, it's best not to go there. Once the beast hoggets you, well, I hope you're as lucky as we were the day my grandpa died. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.